So hello and welcome to my course. In this tutorial, you will learn how to work with objects and shapes and the difference between these objects. Look at these three cubes. At first look, it may seem that these are three identical cubes. But even it looks identically, from this planar perspective, this is three different objects, with their own options and possibilities. You can also understand it from the layer panel. Every cube has their own icon. But what is the difference? Which type of objects we have and what we can do with them? We will learn right now. Let's start from the beginning. In this menu, you can see some sections. These sections are groups of different objects you can put in the viewport. The first group is the shapes. Shape is what you may know from Figma, for example. This is a simple 2D form: rectangle, ellipse, triangle, pentagon, and star. If you put a shape, it will behave as a simple flat object. By default, it hasn't a depth, so when you will turn the scene, you wouldn't see this object. When you select your shape, in the object panel you will see the option related to this shape. So every shape has a size parameter, but also every shape can has their own parameters. In case of rectangle, you can change the corner radius, and you can set the corner radius for all corners, or you can set the radius for every corner separately. Also, the roundness method can be smooth or arc. Smooth roundness may be familiar to you as an IO style of rounded corners. It means, in smooth method, it will make from our rectangle a super ellipse shape, while in the arc method, it will make from square a simple ellipse. In case of ellipse, you can make it ring, which means make a hole in the ellipse. Also, you can make a pie using angle slider. You can take a look at the other three shapes in this section by yourself and find out which options they have in the object panel. But even a shape is flat, you can transform this 2D shape into 3D. Every object from this shape section has these three settings: extrusion, bevel, and bevel size. Extrusion is a thing which can help us make our shape from 2D to 3D. So as far we will change this extrusion value here, our shape will be extruded forward. So if we want to make a cube from the rectangle, we need to extrude the same amount of size of the cube side. So if our cube is 100 by 100, let's extrude 100 as well. Now what you see here looks like a cube, but from element perspective, we still have a rectangle, it's just extruded. And while it's rectangle, we still have all options related to the rectangle. We still can change corner radius. So if it will be, for example, the ellipse, with extrusion it will be transformed to the cylinder. But as because it's still the ellipse, we still can change parameters like ring and make looks like a pipe, and angle and make it looks like something like this. Now let's talk about bevel. By this option you can set the size of the face rounding. So you can see how we are adding a chamfer to our cube. But it looks too flat, and we want to see more rounded bevel here. So as because we work with 3D, to render model spline needs sides. As much size your object will have, as smoother the shape will be. So now we have just one side here. So we need to add more sides, bevel sides. So with this parameter, I can make these bevel more rounded. So my personal advice here would be, if you try to make a realistic, or at least just good look in 3D, always add a bevel where it's possible. Even a very small, because this little detail sometimes can come in handy. So you can add this bevel to every shape in the shape section. And not only, as because shape is just a vector, it means these options apply for all vector shapes in Spline. And this group is not alone. In Spline you have a text, vector or pen tool, and you can import an SVG graphic. So let's slightly move to the next section, text and path. Do not confuse the path and the vector tools, they are different. So here, you can add a text to your scene. As far as you select it from the list and put it to your scene, you can start type your text. While the text object is selected, you can see the options it has. First of all, you can change your text here, and of course you can change a font size. But to fit your text into container, your text container size also should be enough. So this size will change the size of the text container. You also can change a font from the list or upload a custom font. and you can change the weight of the font if it's supported by this font. And also you can align your text inside the text container. And as because it's also a vector, you can extrude your text and make it 3D. The same we did for rectangle and ellipse. And you also can make a bevel, but here be careful, because sometimes with some fonts it works not so well and creates some artifacts. With the text, in this section we have a path tool. Well, I don't know why it's in one group with text, because they have nothing in common. And as I said before, do not confuse path and vector. Let's take a look and understand the difference. First, let's take a look at the vector, which is pen tool actually. By this tool, you can draw your vector shape. So yeah, you draw a path and you have to make it closed. Then you can move your dots or bend it by this option. As soon as you finish your shape, then it will work like any other 2D shape in Spline, which means you can extrude it and add some bevel as well. By the way, if you put any simple shape like rectangle and click on it twice, or click on Edit button, you also can adjust the path of this shape. But as soon as you will edit the path of the shape, it will not be an original shape anymore. That is why this icon will be changed. And in case of ellipse, for example, after edit, you will lose options like ring and angle. So this is how vector or pen tool works. But what about path here? I prefer to call this the 3D path, because by this tool you also can draw a path, but it will be already 3D. 3D path is an amazing tool. I like it so much. Most of the time I use it to create a 3D lettering, like this, or some waves, like this. So 3D path consists of two parts: the path you draw by the pen tool and the shape of the cross section. So now you see something like a tube, because the cross-section shape is a circle or ellipse. So we extruded the circle along the path we draw. So that's why this section calls path extrusion. And as because it's circle, the same as ellipse, we have the same option we have in the ellipse shape. We have a ring option, and we can make a tube again, and angle. But we can change the shape we extrude. For example, we can switch it to rectangle. And for rectangle, we can have only corner radius. Also, you can apply a custom shape. Remember I draw a heart with pen tool? I can use my heart as a custom shape. But no matter which shape I have, with 3D path, I can do next manipulations. I can change the depth. Usually it works good when you make some animations. So the depth moves the end side of your path. And with offset, it works nice as well, so I can move the part of my path, like this. So angle will rotate my extruded shape, and while angle rotates all path, twist will rotate only end side. So you see that my heart in the beginning stays at the same position, while in the end it's rotating clockwise or counterclockwise. Also we have a start scale and end scale. So the size of my heart shape now is this, which means my 3D path has the size of my shape evenly over the entire length. But what if I want to make it smaller in the end? Then I can change the end scale here, or vice versa with the start scale. And the final option here is the caps. So now you can see that my heart doesn't have any bevel here, it's just a flat cut. To make it rounded, you can select round here. And with corner and corner sides, you can adjust it how would you like. Few more things about 3D path. Is because it's 3D, it means you can move the path points in the space. So I can select my path, press Edit Path, and select any path point, and start move it not only left, right, and up and down, but also front and back. I can do it right here in the viewport, or I can adjust selected path point here, in the path point section. Also, you can use a path as a direction. In other words, path you draw can be used like a rail, so you can assign any object to this rail, and this object will move and keep the direction of the path. In this example, I assigned a camera object to the path, so I achieved a first view of some roller coaster experience. And the last thing about 3D path, you can apply 2D shape not only as extruded shape, but also as a path. For example, I can use this star, put it to the viewport, and press Convert to Path. So I convert my 2D shape of star into 3D path, but by default with a circle extruded shape. You also can convert to path a text symbol or any SVG icon you have imported to your project. 3D Path is a very powerful tool, and if you like it and want to understand how it works more, you can also check the official Spline tutorial about this tool. Now let's take a look at the next section. In the next section, we have a list of 3D primitives, simple 3D objects. Here, every 3D object also has their own special options. Let's start from the cube. By default, it also has a size, but compared to the 2D shape, where we have just two values, height and weight, in 3D shape size, we have three, x, y, and z, or height, width, and depth. Then we have a size. By default, for cube we have one side everywhere, and for now we don't need to think about it. Then we have a corner. Our cube, from geometric perspective, has 8 corners, so you can make these corners rounded. It feels like a bevel in 2D shapes, and corner sides like a bevel sides can make your shape smoother. This is all options you have with a cube. Let's take a look at the sphere. So sphere as well has a size and sides, but compared to the cube, it has slice Y option, which can cut our sphere like this. So we can make something like a dome. Now let's take a look at the cylinder, because it has much more options. First of all, it has a top and bottom scale, so I can make the top of the cylinder smaller and achieve something like a conus like this, or with bottom like this. Then I have an angle, which, like in case with ellipse, helps me to create something like a pie. Then we have a caps option, and by default it's turned on, and you can turn it off, but I think you're not expected to see something like this, right? Where is the backside of my cylinder? It's still there, but by default Spline rendered only outside part of the model, because most of the time we didn't see what is inside the model, so why Spline should expand its capacity to render something what we cannot see? So little trick here is to go down to the visibility section, and every object except camera and light has this section. Now we have front side active, which means we see only front part of our object, which is outside. But if you want to see inside part, you can switch to both. So now we see what is inside and outside. But if you want to make a cylinder with a hole, like a tube, better to have the caps and then use the hollow option. It will work like a ring in the ellipse, and you will see this nice bevel, which is in case of 3D object, corner. Playing with these options, from simple cylinder you can achieve nice shapes. So all 3D shapes from this list by default has their own set of options. But let's take a look at these two objects, plane and backdrop. Plane, at first look, may remind you of a rectangle, but as you can see, plane hasn't any specific options, like corner radius or extrusion, nothing. Because this 3D object usually used for only one goal, to make a floor, ground, plane, something on what we can put other objects. So usually scenario of working with this plane is the next. You just rotate it and make it bigger, like this. That's it. And backdrop, the same. It's imitate a photo wall background, when you want to imitate a scene when photographers make a photo of some objects. Try to explore which options have their other 3D shapes in this section. But for now, we will move down to the next section, where we have these 3 objects. Latte, bunny, and teapot. Latte is a specific way of creating 3D shapes. It takes a curve and then build a shape based on rotation of the curve. So when you start move this point, you already can see what happened with our shape. I can't say that this is a very useful object, but sometimes you can use it. A very cool example of using this latte object in this 3D model made by Michael Sambora. He made a latte shape and then he used the cloner option to duplicate this shape around the sphere. Now let's go to the bunny. Bunny is a complete model and you can do nothing with this shape. So you may ask me, why we need this shape here? Well, the answer would be sometimes you need some model. For example, I use the bunny model when I play with materials because of the shape, It can help me understand how my material works and interacts with the shape. The same as a teapot. It is a completed model, so if you want to check some material, checking material on shape like this is better than, for example, on a simple sphere. Let's see what else we have in this list. We have a group object, and the funny thing here is you will use the group a lot in your projects, every time, I promise, but you will never use group from this list. Because grouping is the option you can do with layers in the layer panel. You can select objects or one object and then add them to the group. And grouping objects is a very useful thing. First, because that is how you can combine objects together. So when you will rotate them or move, they will do it together. So grouping has multiple functions, from simple organizing your work to assign some animations. We will work with group and we will understand everything about groups during this course. And the final section in this list, objects you can add to your viewport, but which hasn't any 3D or 2D shapes. They just complete some work. Here we have camera and 3 types of lights. In a nutshell, you can use Spline without these objects, but for professional result, better to know how to work with them. Light and camera we actually will discuss separately later in this course, so let's not overload our heads right now. And in Spline we have one more types of objects, which calls a mesh. It's a complex topic. How to work with mesh objects we will figure out in the lesson Modeling from Scratch. But now I just want to show you what does it mean. To create a mesh object, first of all, we need to select a 3D object from this section. Let's go with cube. When cube selected, you can see in this panel and in this section this button, Smooth and Edit. But before I will click on it, I will make sides here for everywhere and I will decrease corner, set to 0. Now I'm gonna click on this button and right now I've converted my cube into the mesh. Now it's not a cube anymore, it's a mesh. You can understand it because the icon was changed here. I will just make it smoother here and now I have a third type of spline object, the mesh object. Every 3D object from this section, as soon as you will convert it to the mesh, will lose their own specific options. But with mesh, you can create something more interesting, more complex, but it's a topic of the other lesson. And let's back to our 3 cubes. Remember in the beginning of this video I said that this is 3 different cubes, and now you can understand why. Because the first cube is just an extruded 2D rectangle, with extrusion equal to size of the cube. Then we have a simple 3D cube with some corner here. And here we have a mesh object, which was made from 3D cube. But look how this light spot is smoother here compared to the other models. This model is much better than this. So when you want to create something, you will have multiple ways to achieve it. And sometimes there are no right or wrong ways, but some ways could be better than another. In this video, we took a look at the objects we have in Spline and their specific options. We will work closely with some of them during this course, but for now, I hope you already know the types of these objects and their difference between each other. In the next lesson, we will talk about basic principles of 3D graphics, how to orient in 3D space, and what you need to know to achieve a good look in 3D. Thanks and see you.